All right, so welcome everyone. I'm so happy you're all here joining us on Twitch, or yeah, it's just gonna be Twitch where you're joining us from, I think. Really quickly, my name's Lena. I'm head of community for Replit. I am joined by two co-hosts today. I'll let them introduce themselves. Maybe Connor, you go first.
Yeah, my name's Connor. I work in marketing here at Replit. And so yeah, super excited to be here and see what you guys build.
Thanks. William.
Yeah. Hey, William Doom, OpenSea. I'm a developer community manager here to help and grow our community and accelerate the adoption of Web3 and NFTs. So yeah, really looking forward to this.
Sweet. All right, thanks, Connor and William. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we've got our Twitter handles here. Other folks will have those as well if you have any follow-up questions after today or just want to follow and see what we get up to. So first off, let's just go over what we're going to be doing today. We are going to have the rest of our wonderful sponsors and partners introduce themselves. So you'll be meeting folks from DoraHacks, Build Space, as well as a few more folks from OpenSea today. And then we're gonna talk a bit more about hackathon logistics. So you'll learn about what our prizes are, what each of the prize amounts are, and different categories. And then we have a very special way, it's special to me, I don't know about the rest of you, but a very special way that we'll be calculating the grand prize so that our community will have a say, and we'll also be using some blockchain in order to handle those votes. And so DoraHacks will be going over what that looks like. Then you'll have an opportunity to ask us questions about the hackathon, get connected to the OpenSea Discord community if you want to learn from other people. And then we have two very special presentations. One is from Michelle Huang, who will be talking about exploring NFTs as new digital primitives, to JPEGs and beyond. I'm super, super excited to hear from her. And then we'll also be getting a tutorial from Fiuza from OpenSea, who will be teaching you all how to create NFTs on Replit, which is a very fast and simple process. So stay to learn, stay to ask questions, and stay to meet some of our sponsors and partners. All right. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to William to talk a bit more about the hackathon. Feel free to drop your questions into the chat, and I will highlight those later on for the Q&A.
Awesome. All right, I'm just going to share my screen real quick. And let's see.
I'll go ahead and hop off to make room for William's screen.
All right, here we go. So my screen, I'm actually sharing the DoraHacks screen, which some of you may have found us through DoraHacks. But I'm just going to go through some of the basic housekeeping, and then we can answer any questions in the Q&A, and then also in the Discord. So we'll be monitoring the Discord, throughout the whole weekend and through next week. But as you can see, today we're kicking off. It's April 7th, so officially kicking off the hackathon. Important dates: submission deadline. It's next Thursday, April the 14th, 11:59 p.m. PST. DoraHacks will provide the mechanism to submit your entries so that we can have the judges vote on them. So that will come in a follow-up email. We'll give you instructions and all of that. And so if you have any questions, though, in the interim or after you receive the email on how to upload your submission, just feel free to hit us up in Discord. The judging period will start on April 15th and run through the 18th, and that's when the judges will take time to review all of the projects based on the tracks that they're assigned to. And then we will have a closing ceremony on April the 19th, and we'll send out information on that. So we'll be on Twitch again. So live broadcast, jump in and find out who the winners are. And I know some winners are going to be overseas. In here, we did mention that you have to be present in attendance for the closing ceremony to win your prize, but I think we'll potentially have to iterate on that because that puts a lot of people in a bad situation if you are overseas and it's 2 in the morning. So we can riff on that. Now, jumping into the requirements, this is an Ethereum blockchain hackathon. So we're looking at Ethereum or Polygon. Those are the two main chains we're looking at, and keeping your projects completely open sourced, no closed source. Core code and functionality of the entire entry should be complete during the hackathon. So if you've been working on something prior to this, we're going to have to kindly ask you that, like, hey, put that one to the side and build on something new for this hackathon, because we don't want anybody coming in with like a pre-built MVP that's just going to be able to ship it and destroy competition. I'm sure that MVP will get traction elsewhere, but we want to create a level playing field. So we want everybody to jump in, net new, build from the ground up. So we're starting at 0. Let's see what else we want to cover in the requirements. And again, yeah, just not working on the project prior to today. Decision for the judging will be final, and then again we'll riff on this for the closing ceremony if requirement to be present. The prize distribution, we'll go through that in a little bit. I'll let the other team members handle that. Ideas that we can focus on building on. So we have 4 tracks that we've identified as core tracks to build into, and your project can overlap into any of these. So don't feel as though like you're going to be siloed into any one specific, because there may be some overlap, and that's perfectly fine. But during submission, you will choose which track that you want to submit to, and it'll be judged based on that track. So for example, we have the gaming in the metaverse. Basically, we want to seize the memes of production and own the metaverse and keep it open for everyone, basically defeating Web 2. And if you follow 6529, you'll understand the hop on board, fam. We're about to save the world mantra, but that'll be a fun one. So feel free to jump in there and show us what the future is going to look like in the metaverse. Onboarding for all. This is, to help individuals that are net new to the NFT and Web3 space. What can we do to help make that UI UX experience, really delightful and invite people to Web3 and remove those blockers that have typically been associated with the Web3 and blockchain space. So this is a real cool one, a huge impact to everyone. So and honestly, all of these are impactful to everyone, and all of the tracks will be great. As far as most creative, we've got a lot of questions of like, hey, will an analytics dashboard count, fractionalized or lending and DeFi protocols? And we say yes. So most creative is sort of like a catch-all in the sense of like, show us your ideas. Like, what are you inventing and simplifying? What can you deliver that changes current environments, current world like issues that you can improve with Web3, blockchain, NFT space. So again, the most creative is a very catch-all, but I think there's a lot of cool things that can fall into that space. Again, DeFi, lending, borrowing, generative art, music, fractionalizing NFTs. So that's a really cool track. Most hilarious, let's think Pepe or MFers, if you're familiar with any of those Web3 references. But this is a great one. Just PFP projects, or what is hilarious? Like, what is the funniest memes out there that you can provide us and the judges with? So those are the tracks. And then as far as like the tracks and how the judging will be laid out, all of this is going to be on DoraHacks, so I don't want to like reiterate this verbatim. But again, it's got to be on the blockchain. It's got to be on Ethereum. We're looking for user experience. How easy is it for an individual, whether they're net new to Web3 or an experienced user? Best engineering. How impressive is the technical implementation? How well is it engineered? Highest wow factors. Most innovative. Like, what are you inventing and simplifying? Most rare. Like, what is something that just nobody was looking around corners that you brought to the forefront? Best visualization and most interesting. And then best crossover, like what can you bring from Web 2 or like in real life to Web 3 and NFT space. So that's the housekeeping and the lay of the land for judging and requirements and the tracks. with that, I'm going to pass it back to Replit and we can talk about prizes.
All right. You know, I actually forgot something really, really important, which is that we did not introduce every single one of our partners yet. I'm so sorry I misread the run of show. But now that you all know kind of what to expect from the week, I want you to know who's behind it, who's making all of this possible other than just Replit and OpenSea, because we definitely needed help from our friends. So first up, I'm going to pull up Farahaj from BuildSpace to tell us a bit more about his work and his company.
Hey everyone, super excited to be here. Thanks Team Replit and OpenSea for including us.
Yeah.
If y'all are new and kind of exploring building a Web3 app for the first time, feel free to just drop a 1 in the chat. Kind of curious to see what the vibes are. But yeah, I'm Farhaj. I lead partnerships with BuildSpace, and what we do is we build awesome educational content that is completely free for Web2 devs or any devs. Oh, amazing! I'm starting to see some 1s in the chat. To learn how to build and deploy actual Web3 apps. So we, luckily have 4, not just 1 or 2, 4 courses around NFTs, all the way from minting an Ethereum NFT to building an entire smart contract, and building your own ENS on a Polygon and distributing really cool domain name NFTs to people. And I also know that y'all just announced the Epic kind of integration with Solana. It's not a part of this hackathon, but if people are curious about that too, feel free to hop on over and check that out. But yeah, super pumped to be here. If y'all are curious, want access to our community, again, it's completely free. You hop on, create an account, you can jump right into studying. And we have TAs who are there around the clock to support you to help ship the stuff, and you get to build it with other people who are doing it at the same time as you. So pumped to be here, and I'm so excited to see all the awesome projects that y'all create.
All right. Thank you so much for helping us out, supporting this hackathon. Appreciate it. All right, everyone. Send kudos to Faraj and Team BuildSpace. And then next up, I want to pull onto this the screen Steve from DoraHacks.
Yeah, morning, guys. Hi, Lena. Hi, William.
Hey.
Yeah. Thanks for having me as well. Thank you, Replit. Thank you, OpenSea. Thank you, BuildSpace. Yeah, very happy to have this opportunity to host this wonderful event on DoraHacks platform. Yeah, essentially DoraHacks, as we just co-hosted East Denver, we run a lot of hackathons, and we have this infrastructure that not only supports Web3 hackathons in a native way, we also supports interesting features which we'll be using in this hackathon as well, quadratic funding and more advanced version of that to help all of the projects to raise donations and grants directly from the community. It is a very vibrant Web3 startup community at DoraHacks. Last year, we have helped a little bit more than 2,000 Web3 startups raised $25 million in grants and donations via different hackathons and grant programs. So I guess this is one of our very first NFT-focused hackathon co-hosted by OpenSea and Replit and BuildSpace. Very happy to see. I already see there are 5 projects already submitted their project to the hackathon at the very beginning. So I believe it will be a very interesting competition. There are $45,000 for prizes. I will introduce a bit more about how the judging will work for this hackathon later in this session. But very happy to have this opportunity to host everyone. We will also support you with project onboarding to DoraHacks platform. If you have any questions when it comes to this hackathon, you can reach out to William and Replit team, but you can also reach out to us. We'll be 100% supporting you guys throughout this few days of the hackathon. Yeah, so yeah, very happy to support you all.
Thank you so much. And in just a minute, Steve's going to come back up and talk a little bit more about quadratic voting. I'm really excited about that. That's how we'll be deciding how some of the prizes are distributed. So let's get to prizes. Steve, I'm going to remove you from the stage, but you'll be back in just a minute. All right. So first of all, as we mentioned, there's a lot of opportunity to win prizes, and they are great prizes. William went over what the categories are. I just want to talk a little bit more about them. And I'm actually going to share my screen. William, you already went over the categories. Did you cover category amounts yet? No, right? No. Okay. Alrighty. Here we go.
I was muted.
Okay. All right. So here's our site, by the way, nft.replit.com, easy to find. Whoops, not sharing yet. Where's my little screen, guys? It doesn't matter. All right, I'm putting it in the chat. Go to nft.replit.com and you'll be able to see these. And we have a number of different prizes. The 4 tracks that William talked about before, which are gaming and metaverse, onboarding for all, most creative, and most hilarious. Those all have prize amounts at $5,000. And then we have a grand prize at $25,000. And that prize, so we have a team of amazing judges who you can also find at nft.replit.com, some of whom will be joining us and speaking today. They'll be deliberating over category prizes, but that grand prize is going to be decided using quadratic voting so that our community members and participants will be able to weigh in on what the best projects are. And to speak more about that, I'm going to pull Steve onto the stage. And William, call me out if I'm forgetting any details that we need to shout out.
No, you're good.
Awesome. Steve, take it away.
Yeah, sure. So Lena and William just introduced, there will be 4 tracks in this hackathon. And for each team joining, for each project you submitted, you need to select one track. You cannot select multiple tracks. So the judging will have 3 phases in total. The first phase is, let's just say for each track, there are 50 projects each. And for each tracks, there will be judges dedicated to judge the projects in those tracks. So phase 1 is that, let's just say there are 5 judges judging track number 1, and there are 50 projects out there. So each judge will select first 3 projects out of the 10 projects they are in charge of judging. So the first phase is that the 50 projects will be divided to 5 different judges, and the judges will select 3 out of the 10 projects they are assigned to judge on. So this way we'll select the very first 15 projects in each track out of the 50 projects. So it is a rough estimation, but this is how the judges will first screen down to the first batch. And and then we'll enter phase 2. For phase 2 is that all of the 5 judges will vote again on the selected projects. In phase 1, in the numbers I just shared, there will be 15 projects in total selected by 5 judges judging on this track out of the 50 projects submitted. And the 5 judges will then judge again on the 15 projects selected in the first phase. And then out of the 15, the finalists for entering I would say that the grand finale or the final round will be 3 projects. So we'll select 3 projects out of each track to enter the final, we call quadratic voting finale. I'll introduce a bit more on quadratic funding later. So the 3 projects will be, I would say, the top 3 out of each track, and there are 4 tracks. So the prize pool, the first part of the prize pool is that every track will eventually have a winner that received most votes from the judges, and those winners have an initial prize of $5,000 each. Like there are 4 tracks, and each winner of the winner of each track will receive $5,000 as prizes first because they won the tracks. And the most interesting part about this hackathon is that we have introduced quadratic funding and quadratic voting to the finalists. It is the scheme we actually use for East Denver in-person hackathon and East Denver virtual hackathon. But we are very happy to implement this in the OpenSea hackathon as well. So what is quadratic funding and what is quadratic voting? Is essentially, and we think, a very interesting experiment, very different than the traditional $1 one vote or the traditional one person or one judge one vote schemes. So in quadratic voting, the cost of each vote goes up linearly as you want to vote more votes to each individual projects. So even if, let's just say, some of the judges want to vote a lot of votes to one team, essentially the cost of voting for the project will go up like linearly. It will go up to very high to prevent someone who want to that even if someone want to vote for a project a lot, they can't actually cast in too many votes because essentially the cost of the votes goes up to a pretty high stage. Yeah, so like I mentioned, there in total 4 tracks, and in after phase 2, there will be 3 projects selected to join the grand finale, which we will call quadratic funding finale. So in total, there will be 12 projects competing in the grand finale for a final prize pool of $25,000. And how the $25,000 will be distributed to different projects will be quadratic voting results. So all of the judges will participate in the final quadratic funding voting, and depending on the judge voting results, the prize pool will be distributed to the 12 finalists. So every team that made it to the finalist, the 12 finalists list, will have a chance to compete for the $25,000 prize pool and earn something out of that. Yeah, I think that's essentially the core, or how quadratic funding works. A very interesting scheme we implemented into this is Macy. Macy is like an even more upgraded version to quadratic funding to make the whole system fairer, because Macy stands for Minimum Anti-Collusion Infrastructure. In traditional quadratic funding, because all of the voting is actually on-chain, essentially there might be some chance for the voters and the project themselves to collude. The projects can bribe the voters for votes. Essentially, you vote for me, and I can probably promise airdrops or some. It could be an NFT airdrop. It could be a FT airdrop to the audience, to the community. But essentially, with Macy, collusion can be prevented because there's zero knowledge implemented, but I wouldn't go too deep into the technical details. But essentially, you can essentially vote for my project, but I will never know who voted for my project. But essentially, I will know how many voters essentially voted for me, how many votes I received. So with Macy, we can actually create a fairer voting mechanism to I guess this is great for many hackathons, so that we won't worry about tallying votes and like any kind of unfair situation created among different teams. So very happy to implement Macy to this hackathon as well. Macy was very first introduced at East Denver, which was a blast. We used Macy to let the judges vote for the 30 finalists out of hundreds of submissions. We intend to do the same for the OpenSea hackathon. So hopefully everything goes on great. And I guess if you have any questions about quadratic funding, quadratic voting, and Macy, and how the judging and how the voting mechanism works in this hackathon, I'll be here for the Q&A session. And also, you can always find me and DoraHacks team explaining the rules to you if you have more questions to that during the hackathon. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think I didn't miss any of the rest of the details, but yeah, happy to introduce QF, QV, and Macy to our hackathon. Hope you'll run great. Yeah. Thanks, Lena.
Thank you, Steve. I am so glad to have you here to explain that because my brain is still expanding to fit all that information. I love it. What a cool process. Shout out to the folks in the chat. Thanks so much for being so supportive of this and exploring this world with us too. Steve, I'm going to keep you on stage and just shout out to folks who are here. If you have any questions for Steve, would love to take them now specifically about the quadratic voting process, or if you have any questions about the judging process as well. I'm going to give it a couple seconds. Mostly just kind encouragement so far. I've loved it. All right. Sweet. If anyone has any additional questions for him, Steve, where can they find you or ping you other than at the DoraHacks site? Oh, wait, we got a question. Real Jellybeard asks, how many votes do judges get?
Oh, yeah. I've seen some really good questions. So, I think in phase one, essentially, like I described in phase one, essentially, the judges will be assigned to judge on different teams, and I'll go through phase one again. Essentially, let's just say there are 50 projects in a specific track, and there are 5 judges for the track. Essentially, each judge will be assigned 10 teams to judge on. For phase one, each judge will need to select 3 teams out of the 10 teams they are assigned on. So essentially, this is not about voting. This is essentially to select the teams they think they're eligible to compete in the future. It might be a tough choice to select the 3 out of the 10, but essentially they will do that. And the second part is to allow the judges to vote again on all of the teams they selected each other. Like beforehand. So that's phase 2. Essentially, they'll select 3 teams out of the 15 teams that are selected initially to enter this final stage. And I think actually in phase 3, which is the Macy quadratic voting round, that each judge will be given 10, we call it 10 voice credits. So the voice credits will be the votes they use in the Macy rounds. So that's how many votes they will receive. So they can vote the 10 votes to at least 3 different projects, and it can be like 7 votes to project 1, 2 votes to project 2, 1 vote for project 3, or they can evenly distribute their votes to 10 different projects out of the 12 finalists. So it's actually to their discretion on how to vote different teams. So this is the question by Real Jelly Beard. Thank you for this amazing question. And second question is by Jawas. 25K going to one team or distributed. So the 25K will be distributed to the 12 finalists that made it to the Macy round, to the quadratic voting part. And how the 25K will be distributed will be based on judge voting results. So essentially, the idea behind that is that if a project received most votes from the judges and received votes from most judges, they essentially have a bigger chance of winning a larger part of the 25K out of that. Essentially, we eventually have a ranking of the 12 projects based on judge voting results. And there will also be a ranking of how much they got matched from the 25K. Essentially, that's how that will be distributed. And yeah, I think team size will be a William question or a Lena question. Yeah.
Team size, we didn't really put a cap on that. We don't want any like ringers coming in like 20 deep, but I think that we're pretty flexible on that. Team, any thoughts on that? I mean, any pushback on team size?
I'm with you, William. Pulling up Connor.
Yeah, I feel the same way. If a startup with like 50 employees is submitting a project, you might get disqualified. But
yeah, no way.
Yeah.
All right. And for those of you, by the way, if you're still looking for a team, go onto the OpenSea Discord. I'm going to ask William or Connor to drop the link in the chat. And there's a channel in there where you can throw your pitch out there, talk about what you're bringing to the table, and maybe find some teammates to work with you. Someone asked about bribes. No bribes, pure, authentic, beautiful work with integrity is accepted. Basically, good work is its own currency. So I'll just say that. All right. Got a couple other questions.
Yeah, we have a question. Explain QV to a 13-year-old. Why is it better? Yeah. So we don't necessarily say QF or QV is better than the traditional voting mechanism or is better than $1 one vote. But I'm very happy to see that all of the organizers of this hackathon are very open-minded to experiment QV and QF. In this one, QV was actually introduced to the crypto space by Vitalik and a few other Ethereum researchers as a generally interesting mechanism to fund public goods in Ethereum ecosystem. And DoraHacks was actually very happy to promote QV even more to multi-chain, and we generalize in the blockchain and the hackathon space especially. In the past, QV has proved to be a very interesting mechanism for the teams to get votings from the judges and from the community, and to get a matching. Essentially, QV and QF are even better implemented if we have a general prize pool, pretty much like this one. We have a 25K pool to be distributed to all of the winners and finalists. So I guess one of the ways where slightly better is that every team that made it to the finalists have a chance to win a portion out of the prize pool instead of the traditional the winner takes all. Let's say if it goes the traditional way, maybe the first project will take home 15K, the second project take home 8K, the third project taking home 2K, and there's no fun for all the other participants. So in the with this QF, even if a project that received 2 votes from the judges, they might still take home 500, 1,000 out of it. So essentially we want the prize pool to be distributed in a fairer mechanism. Yeah, so I hope this answers your question.
All right, we've got some questions about submitting. This is a great moment actually to move into just general Q&As actually. Definitely, we've got, let's see, everyone's on the stage. Cool, so we have everyone we need to answer questions. So let's start with, someone asked about, in the rules, you cannot work on your project before the event begins. That's saying don't submit any projects you've already started before. Everything needs to be built within the time period of this hackathon, so between today and April 14th. Okay. How are you going to check that the project is brand new? William.
So, and Steve can back me up on this. So when we have you submit, there will be a requirement to show your repo and provide that. Obviously, you could clone it or create a new one, but we are relying on some trust here. But if we do find out that hey, you did create it prior to, then obviously we'll probably not vote for that or let the judges know. But we're expecting everybody to be honest. Honesty is the best policy.
All right. Someone asked, if a project is not open source, how can they share code? Who should they send the invite to? Let me think. So if you're building on Replit, you can share the join code to with us, with our team. We'll make sure all the judges get it and can view it. Preferably, your project's going to be visible for others to see, so you'll be publishing it to Replit's community and sharing it. But I understand if you don't feel comfortable with that. Connor, William, or Steve also, any other thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, just to, hit on it, and we'd mentioned, and it was and it is listed on the DoraHacks. So the core code and functionalities of the entry should be completed during the hackathon, and completely open source without reliance on closed source software to implement. So, hopefully that helps clarify
Awesome.
any issues.
Okay, so excuse me, it's got to be open source.
Yeah, we're looking for that. I mean,
I think that's valid.
yeah, I think in a hackathon, it'd be awkward to have some closed source software coming out of it.
All right, hear that, Cruzo cards? It's got to be open source. Get creative. All right. Someone asked, I have access to DALL-E. How are you going to check if I use this, or is this allowed? Is that how you say it? I've only read it. I've never heard it said out loud.
I don't know. I'm kind of jealous you have access to DALL-E though.
Yeah.
I kind of want access.
Let me follow your question with another question. Invite us as well, please.
Well, and I guess too, like when you say you're going to use it, like you're using that for your like just to create your actual like NFT, or like, I guess, elaborate on that. Let's like, if we want to dive a little deeper into your question in the sense of like, how are we going to check, and I mean, what are you going to use it for?
Give them some time to reply. Yep, it's got to be open source Cruzo cards. Oh, thank you, like Wally, Dolly, got it. All right.
Yeah, no, we get like Photoshop isn't open source. So like, we're not saying like so like Creative Commons, so if you're not like an artist and you are not generating your own art, as long as it's like, like CC, CC0, Creative Commons open, that's fine. If you're using Photoshop, that's fine. Let's see. What other questions are coming in? But yeah, Photoshop is not open source.
But you can use Photoshop to build the stuff. It's not, I think what more about open source is that if you're building a project and, it's completely closed source, or 90% of what you're building is connected to like closed source software.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes it a little bit more difficult it feels like less fair system compared to someone who's building something completely open source where you can see all of the software.
I will add, with community voting, you're going to need to make it accessible to folks to vote on. So, all right. Can the project be a different implementation of the existing project? I'm sure most devs will be recycling their code.
I mean, the ethos of like a hackathon, I mean, because definitely if you're just like getting in here to game it and you're like, hey, we built this, and like we look and have a repo that has the same exact thing, or you actually have a fully functioning shipped app, I guess I'd have to question why you're participating. I don't want to be like very difficult, like, abrasive in that sense, but this is sort of like the invent and simplify on like, hey, let's build something cool, let's hack on something and like build something over this period of this week, and ship something new. Now, if it, improves on like an existing project, and is completely like almost like net new, like I don't see a problem with that. Connor, Steve, any feedback on that?
I would agree.
I'm with you. Guys, I'm going to post the hackathon rules again into the chat, just so folks have those, since I see that's coming up a lot. All right. Only Ethereum and Polygon can be used, right? Not REPL. Well, just heads up, we have a Solidity template on Replit. So you can build directly on Replit to deploy smart contracts if you want. Okay. What about using data that's been streamed into a database if the data itself is on the blockchain? Syncing can take a long time.
So that if the data is on the blockchain, so are you asking if you can use it or not? I guess trying to find that question real quick in the thread.
From Jawas.
What about using data that's been shared? Yeah, I mean, if it's on the blockchain, it's out there. It's for the public to see. So are you asking if you can use it, or just in the amount of time you think it'll help or take for your team to access it?
I think he's asking if it'll count as like work done before.
Oh, no, like if you're using like existing like data sets, we're not expecting you to go like build like fake data sets. Like you can use real world like data that's existing out there, you know, so, but that is a good question.
Okay. See,
Yeah,
here's another one. Oh,
real
sorry.
quick, I mean, the continuation of MongoDB containing the OS cells, for example. Yeah, and I apologize, I should have put this out there. We're going to send a follow-up email with a special link to access or actually sign up for our API. So we're going to help expedite getting our API keys to. So yeah, if you're wanting to, use our API, that is completely open. So yeah, we'll be sending out an email and you'll have a link and you'll be able to sign up for our API. So hopefully that helps answer that question.
All right, I've got another question. Funniest NFT. What if the concept is the combination of multiple NFTs? Can they be submitted as one entry, or can you only submit one? Like, are you thinking like a compilation of NFTs? As long as it's within the week, built within the week, I think that's okay. I'm seeing nods. All right. Okay. All right. Let me see what else. So a general question. Do we need to make an NFT collection? Only one NFT, a staking system, a mint, or? You've thought of it all. And the answer is, I'm gonna ask William to keep me honest here. All. We have all these amazing categories, but William, maybe you can speak more on that.
Yeah, no, I think as we had shared earlier, like we have the 4 tracks. And so if you feel it, one of them falls into that specific track, like definitely, submit it for that track. So like you could definitely build like, an NFT that, you could then stake that's based in your metaverse. So then you have to decide like how far out you want to extrapolate that, or how granular you want to get and which track you want to submit it to. So are you submitting just for, the NFT minting functionality? Or are you going to submit it for the staking, or like the metaverse, or as the whole shebang? But yeah, we'll also leave that up to you as a builder to decide which track you want to submit and which portion, or all of the above. But yeah, as we shared, there are the specific tracks that you'll submit to. And then keep in mind that, you'll have the chance to compete for the grand prize based on the quadratic funding.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then my question, do we cover the cost of deploying the NFT minter?
So there is the test net. So you can definitely use the test net. So it doesn't have to be on the main net. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's both on Polygon and Ethereum, there's the testnet. So you can definitely use testnet. And we have the testnet API keys as well.
Sweet. Awesome. Got a question from I Am Nebula. Are there any tutorials for Polygon and Ethereum? Because I don't understand all of it, but I know other parts. I know we've got a helpful resources section on our site. I'll post that in here again. Scroll to the bottom of the FAQs. And then if other people have resources they want to share in the chat, please, by all means. Maybe other folks here know even better resources that we haven't shared yet.
Well, the Build Space team, they have their 2 internal tracks. If they're still on, we could bring them up real quick. And we were talking about that, and they were sharing that you can knock out their tracks in like a quick early morning on a weekend.
All right, I'm putting their website in the chat as well. You guys can find it there.
But these are really good questions, and yeah, definitely like learn and be curious. and see what you can, learn if you're net new, and then build and submit. I think that's the best way to experiment with the opportunity to win too.
Nice. All right, another question, just to double check. We are open sourcing both contracts and front-end app.
Well, your contract's going to be open if it's on the blockchain. So yes, yeah.
And then I think the front end should be open source as well. We always like to see kind of under the hood there. Would you agree, William?
Yeah, that'll help out. And I mean, the composability too of like Web3, and these are good questions in the sense of too of like we've got like some Web2 builders that are coming into the space. There's the composability factor of like protocols and being able to use like Web3 and the blockchain as like, if you visualize like building blocks, or let's say Legos, you can just start stacking. And so whatever you're building, allowing that to be built upon by others. So if you're like closed source, then you're going to limit yourself and the whole ecosystem in Web3 as a whole. And I'm not trying to give like the blockchain primer or the ethos, but it's definitely good. And these are good questions that hopefully will red pill you or green pill you. And then before you know it, you'll be, a blockchain maxi.
Throwing all the words out there, William. All right. Yeah, open source. The more the merrier. I guess I could say wag me. Oh God, cringe. Okay. Next question. Where do we choose the column we want to do? So you mean the category that you want your prize or that you want your project submitted for?
Yeah.
I'll let Steve take that one.
So I can take this one. So essentially, first thing you need to do to submit your project is to create a project profile on DoraHacks platform. So on DoraHacks, every project, open source project, is called a build. So you'll be submitting your build to the hackathon. You need to create a build can So first step, create a build on DoraHacks. You can actually use this build to participate not just for this hackathon, but for future hackathons as well. You can also develop your build profile page. It will be like your build's Facebook page later. But first, create a build on DoraHacks. Second, when you submit your build to the hackathon, will allow you to select the tracks that you want to compete in. And like we explained this earlier, you only select one track. You only be eligible to select one track. So do select the track that you deem you fit in most. And this is where you'll be going into the competition of the track. Actually, there will be a screening process by us and also by the organizer of the hackathon. So we'll check if this is a genuine project. And then after you pass the screening process, review process, you can find your project live in the hackathon, where everyone can actually check out your project and judge on it.
Sweet. We got a question. How are Web2 developers going to feed their families? I'm just going to let that one hang. We're not going to answer that here. All right. Cool. Last call for any more questions. Thanks for all of these. These are really great. And stay tuned. Make sure that you're on the Discord. Make sure that you are registered so that you're getting all of the updates we send out. If there's any further clarification that needs to come up throughout the week, we'll be updating you through those avenues. But definitely on the Discord, especially to get those immediate updates and also connect with others. Thanks, William, for dropping that in again. Awesome. Will we have some type of mentors? Ooh, I love that question. Again, I would say get on the Discord. We're allowing folks to link up and create their own teams. I think the same goes for mentors. If you need any help, if you have any questions, just connect with folks on the Discord. You can also find our judges and their Twitter accounts all on the website. Those are great people who you might want to tweet at, get some ideas from. We're about to have Michelle join us on the stage. You're going to be learning from her a bit. So lots of places to get some help, but biggest one is going to be on the OpenSea Discord. All right. And those of you who are like experts who are on this call, and you have a lot of wealth to share in regards to your knowledge and your experience, make sure that you're on that Discord to help people out too, right? It goes both ways. Pay it forward. So that's where I'll leave that. I am not seeing any more questions in the chat, but we'll be here in the background in case anything else comes up, and we can respond in text. But I want to make sure that we move on to our next portion, which I'm really, really excited for. This section is called Exploring NFTs as New Digital Primitives to JPEGs and Beyond. And it's going to be led by the wonderful Michelle Huang. Awesome. And Michelle, for those of you who don't know her, is a creative coder and multimedia artist. She works on a variety of projects in the Web3 space, and she's interested in combining both hardware and software elements in her art. She's currently exploring projects in neurotech, sustainable fashion, drone programming, specifically drone programming for light shows. I'm just envisioning that timeless meme of Lady Gaga jumping off of the Super Bowl dome like this with the drones behind her. I'm just going to attribute all of that to you, Michelle. And
maybe one day. No,
I can't wait. I can't wait. She's the founder of Akia DAO, a Japanese eco-village project, and is also an experienced architect at a Web3 startup called Atomic Form. She's got her Twitter handle right here under her face, so make sure to give her a follow. And Michelle, I am going to hand it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Super excited to be here and talk about new digital primitives with you guys. So GM, everyone, thank you for the introduction. I'm Michelle, and I'm really excited to talk more about what NFTs could look like beyond the static JPEG. So really pushing the frontiers and putting the world on chain. What does it mean to dive deeper in terms of what this means for our ways of digital expression? So a little bit more about myself. I've been to a lot of hackathons and I've created a lot of art and NFT projects, but above all, I would consider myself a digital artist. Two of my frontiers recently have been in motion graphic design, incorporating biosensors with my art. And so similar to what was said about brainwaves, I've been having a lot of fun with neurotech. And so here in this piece, I've actually woodworked this LED light cube to calibrate the lights to respond to my brainwaves. So when I go deeper in meditation, the cube starts pulsing blue, effectively becoming a mental mirror of my internal state. And on the right-hand side, this is an object that morphs in a 3D or virtual world when I feel relaxed. And so I'm especially interested in feedback loops, storytelling, and citizen science, which spurred a lot of interest in this space, specifically also in Web3. Like, how do we share data and how do we take this data and connect with other people online across platforms? My second project is Akia DAO, which is a DAO I started with a friend to renovate empty houses in rural Japan into living communities and art collectives. So this collective is funded and governed by NFTs, which is an interesting use case about NFTs that I'll talk a little bit more later during this presentation. And finally, I am an experienced architect at Atomic Form, where I'll be helping build digital and physical bridges for Web3. So essentially acting as the portal to Web3, starting first with NFTs as displays. And so we're answering questions like, how do you create a centralized passport to Web3 when you have different wallets for each chain? How do you bridge content starting with NFTs across chain and showcase them in a UX friendly way that feels relatable to the rest of the world, even if they don't own any crypto? And after NFTs, how do we think about interacting with our very identity within Web3? And so a lot of interesting questions, some that are probably a little bit more philosophical in nature, but first, let's talk about the first origin point of NFTs that everyone is probably familiar with by now, which are JPEGs. So NFTs as JPEGs. This is standard media content, and not to downplay this at all, like some of which have really good stories, lore, communities. These JPEGs are essentially memes that create and cement culture. Memes are actually the most complex and condensed version of human language and communication in general. So in other words, a visual inside joke that has immediate cultural relevance and context. And you can ultimately like just instinctively tell how different these vibes and these feels are for each other. So for example, Crypto Coven Project and Bored Apes and CryptoPunks, they are distinctly different from each other, but they represent stories and communities. And so in other words, vibes in the same ways that different art call to different kinds of people. And so these symbols represent really complex, dynamic, and constantly changing communities that can't be captured fully with an image, but it still is able to hold a very large spectrum of influence. So every now and then you'll get a different media format, like a 3D object that you can play around with, or a movie, or something that even responds to your cursor. Occasionally, you'll even get an app, a POAP that signals a common context, like an event that you have gone to that is soul bound, and also queryable on chain. So you're able to find out ways that there is shared context. But there's this really nice chart that I actually found on Twitter, which is where a lot of crypto is. But this is John Palmer, created by John Palmer, and he has a couple dimensions in which NFTs are existing on. So it goes from static representation to dynamic representation and high and low functionality. And he says that there's approximately 90% of NFTs which are static and JPEGs and are, allow you to get access to different communities, but otherwise might be hard to have a lot of function in. And so what I'm saying is that images are really just the beginning of is just the beginning of what this is, and that is what the topic of this presentation is around. NFTs are not just JPEGs, but they are essentially blobs of JSON data that contain pointers to media. And so what exists behind the data? Once people start seeing and experimenting with what the metadata looks like behind the curtain, the game really changes, and that is the ultimate power of it. JPEGs are just one very early UI on top of it. So let's peel back this image and show the metadata structure underneath. So I'm just gonna delete this. This is the fun part about having slides in Figma. You can just do cool stuff like this. And so this is very fundamentally the metadata that exists behind this NFT. So you can see that NFTs are really just databases that can link to JPEGs. And this is what I mean by linking. You have this image property and you have this link, and I've gone ahead and copied and pasted the link here. But it is the exact photo of the flower that I just deleted, and that's where the image goes at the end of the day. And so you can do a lot of really cool stuff with this underlayer. So with token ID and images and a lot of other things that can augment your experience of this token beyond just the surface layer of the JPEG or media itself, but something that extends to the rest of the function of that token. And so this means that NFTs can add a new layer of programming functionality. So you can add in interactions in the same ways that JavaScript has allowed for websites to become much more than static HTML and CSS pages. And so I'll show you what I mean. This is an example of a website, which will open here. It's, you can do this with any website that has an image, but if you go into the page source, you can actually see here in the background image. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. But this is also very, very similarly to the image link that we saw earlier behind the NFT, also pointing to an image that essentially then becomes this picture that you see here. And so in the same ways that browsers have played out in the early days of the web, where new features worked in some browsers but not others. So for example, you'd go onto one browser to do all your banking stuff. You go into another browser to do your social media stuff. You basically have to have all these different siloed browsers to figure out what you would want to support or what actions that you want to support. So you have to determine how many browsers that you're willing to put up with, and over time, we expect to see the same change happen for NFTs as well, where more NFTs will start coming up, and developers and builders will have to wrangle millions and millions of NFTs in the future. And so the need for standards will have to rise and attempt to make it easier for new experiences to be created with NFTs. But again, as NFTs as databases here, you can extend NFTs to anything stored in a centralized Web2 database. And so today that is JSONs, but in an NFT world, it becomes much more interoperable and portable, especially if there are standardized fields between these contracts. So again, NFTs as databases, and I'd like to take this slide to really illustrate some cool examples that allow you to see different manipulations of database. Because they're database entries, because they're on the blockchain, NFTs ultimately represent open and tradable data. So in other words, with NFTs, you're actually able to own these digital objects. You're able to find public data, remix it, and beyond databases, again, they're programs which contain functionality, state, and visual representation. So OG Crystals is one of really, really cool NFT project that shows how a NFT can evolve ultimately over time based off what happens to it. And then on top of that, renders a visual representation of this state. And so kind of to take you through the process, an OG crystal can be purchased on the primary market. A collector can choose the color, and it then appears in your wallet. But in order to evolve it to the second stage, you have to have this crystal in your wallet for approximately 5 days. To get from phase 2 to phase 3, it takes another sale on secondary markets, or transfer into another wallet. And each of these crystals, actually, I want to say, is algorithmically generated based off of the metadata of someone's wallet. And so they're going to be different. And I think this is a really cool visualization of how you can collaboratively generate artwork and have these things really transfer into different components, into different images over time based off of these historical transactions. The phase 6 is really interesting as well. It basically happens when there is a complete sale of all of these primary seeds, and that essentially co-creates this crystalline reef that the owner and artists collectively generate. And so this almost becomes like a huge painting of all the NFTs that were evolved and transformed with every single wallet and process. So really cool example of dynamic NFT, generative NFT. And just to go into this a little bit further, OG crystals on OpenSea, you can actually, and this is again like another visual representation of what this looks like behind the data. So like let's go into this one, OG crystals 2992. You can go into the details of this and get the, one second, I think it's, okay, there it is, token ID. So when you go to the token ID, you get the same JSON blob that you saw when I deleted the sunflower Bubkey NFT earlier. And so here you can kind of like, this is, you could prettify your JSON, but ultimately you can go to the image, copy and paste this, and that essentially becomes the image that you saw in the OG crystals on OpenSea. And so the cool thing about this too is that you can also see what it looked like historically. So I'm not sure how much you can see this in the screen share, but I'm basically changing the 2.jpg to 1.jpg. And you can see how like that's also stored on the API of the original crystal that was formed. What's also cool is that I can change this token ID of 2992 to 2994, for example, and get an entirely different crystal. And all of this can be rendered and displayed and like publicly searchable. So that's also a really fascinating aspect of how these NFTs as images contain so much data under them. Pack is another artist that I wanted to highlight in terms of really creative and forward-thinking art for NFTs. So he's created a lot of cool ways to visualize concepts. So the more, this is called his Merge NFT project, and these NFTs themselves are called masses. And so the more mass ones one person collects, the larger one's final mass would be. And so what this means is that if you have 2 NFT masses in your wallet, they actually end up combining into one NFT. So this talks about not only NFTs that represent different state changes over time, but NFTs that can ultimately interact with each other and incentivize different things. So maybe, you know, like this is a discourse on scarcity and how when you collect more and more things, it kind of like bundles together into one artistic form. So there's a lot of fascinating ways that we can think about NFTs as databases. And of course, this is just the beginning of a lot of conversations. For example, in the biofeedback art that I had showed you earlier with my LED cube, like that could also be a database. So you can have a NFT actually change sync or async and ultimately become a conversation artifact that is interactive, dynamic, and also live if you want it to. So that's, again, really pushing the frontiers of NFT here, but that's what we're here to do. So the fun part about databases and any form of abstraction in general is that you can get it's really easy to get lost in the sauce. And so there's this analogy or this kind of like meme that is like turtles all the way down, which is a scenario for an expression for the problem of infinite regress. Like, what is this turtle standing on? Oh, another turtle. What is that turtle standing on? Another turtle. So it's very easy to get lost in the sauce. So to prevent this whole scenario for metadata and for data structures in general, it's really important to convert it back into some form of reality. The ultimate goal of any technology is to be used as a force multiplier for accomplishing real world goals, rather than being self-referential black holes that are infinitely recursioning. So an interesting question that I want to leave you guys with also is, like, in short, using cryptos and NFTs as coordination mechanisms is really important to achieve real life goals. But at the end of the day, what do you want to coordinate on? And so I'll give a couple of examples of what cool projects that people have been able to coordinate on using this kind of technology in the past to hopefully see a little bit more inspiration for you guys. So NFTs as gaming. This is a fascinating example of someone who has put an entire chess game on chain, meaning that every single move here you play ultimately becomes an NFT. Yes, you have to pay gas, but you get an NFT instead. So I guess that's the trade-off here. So this is a NFT that comes out of interactivity and complexity for that. So anyone can make a move and mint an NFT. So this is almost a ancillary point where NFTs can represent not only game pieces, but game states as well. So this allows you to essentially own a piece of chess history forever. And so because you're able to genuinely own the objects, instead of users having to depend on the game for these assets, games can now build around user-owned objects. And so there's a lot of interesting ramifications for what this means for portability between games as well. So objects, again, that a user owns isn't necessarily only specific to that game. So for example, let's say you make a meditation app, and that is like a game journey where when you complete it, you get airdropped some meditation NFT. And let's say your friend is working on another game, like a battle or a melee game or something like that, that allows certain people to find a safe haven without conflict if they have this specific meditation NFT. So you and your friend can actually join forces and to have like really cool collaboration opportunities between games. But there's one caveat here. So similar to the metadata standardization and structure that I mentioned that has to happen between browsers for NFTs to act as interoperable JSONs, game NFT standardization will also have to be required. So case in point, like in Decentraland, you can create your own in-game asset, which is a wearable, but that is also only limited to a certain amount of triangles that you can have and render using the engine, as well as a certain amount of colors that load properly within the game. So there's a lot of thinking to do in standardization across games, but it's definitely a field that I feel especially excited by. And I think provides a really interesting foundation for a lot of other ideas to also grow on top of. So for example, games, the role of NFTs in games can be extended to really anything that requires large multiplayer coordination. So for example, governance, which is also requiring large multiplier coordination. So Nouns DAO is a cool example of this, using NFTs as governance. So Nouns DAO is basically a DAO that auctions off one noun or one NFT every day forever. And the goal of this collective is to use the proceeds of the auctions that they get from these NFT sales to empower artists and communities by funding various projects that are voted on by the community or the DAO members itself. So instead of having the profits from, like let's say a traditional NFT sale go to the artist, the DAO acts as a massive NFT hedge fund. So you can create and vote on governance proposals with your NFTs that you've collected, and execute transactions on the blockchain when they are approved. And so maybe the question is, how do they vote? Instead of ERC20 tokens, they use ERC721 tokens, or these NFTs that you get from your auction. And these NFTs effectively represent voting rights. So nouns use their voting abilities. So at this point, it's one noun equals one vote to direct the treasury. And if you take a deeper dive into their code, it's absolutely fascinating. You can actually see how you're able to draw some of the ERC20 token functionality within their ERC721 tokens. So allowing this type of NFT to actually be malleable to include voting rights into the smart contract. And this is something that we're thinking about for IKEA DAO as well, the Japanese eco-village project that I talked about a little bit earlier. So in other words, governance as NFTs. These NFTs could allow for token-gated access to content. Like if you have an NFT, being able to have a certain platform or front end that allows you to apply to live in a certain eco-village or a certain artist collective. And you can also vote on proposals in the same ways that Nouns DAO does, but in the local residential community. So it's really cool that you're able to see different factions of how these NFTs can represent different assets or ownership of a collective itself. 3 more ways and ideas for you to go along in your hackathon journey for NFTs to be used as alternative ways. The first of which is NFTs being used to engage with the community itself. So say you love music, and imagine pitching a small production to an artist that you really love. If this acts as a seed of inspiration for the artist, what happens if they create the song and they have an NFT of the song and they airdrop you and maybe everyone else who contributed to that inspiration a fractionalized ownership of this NFT that represents the song? And so this is really interesting because it allows for creators to engage with their audience in ways that have been really hard to do in the Web2 space. So allows rewards to be shared and to be given and attributed back into the community, which is oftentimes the very reason why a successful launch or a product gets created. And people who are early supporters then can also get a share in the recognition and possibly even financial gain for being an early backer. And to follow up that, also become discoverable for other people that want to find people to help see ideas. And so it also becomes a discovery mechanism to query on the blockchain around stuff like this. So especially good ideas, have to come from a decentralized and diverse group of people. NFTs as healthcare data storage. This personally has been on my mind a lot, especially as I've been working with a lot of biosensor data. And so sort of the inspiration behind this is we have a ERC721 token structure. What about a EHR721 that represents electronic healthcare data that is currently the form of data that that medical industries use to be able to transfer packets between hospitals? There should be new standards for storing healthcare data in a decentralized science way in your wallet to make sure that anonymity is preserved and that privacy is preserved. And maybe this structure can be voted on and maintained by a collective system like HIPAA. I've been absolutely dreaming of a world where healthcare consumer data belongs with the patient. And for example, taking a blood test at a lab, getting your blood data results as NFTs, and then being able to stake them into research organizations to contribute to science. Or at the very least, again, at least carry this healthcare data with you so you can transfer them easily between hospitals or between doctors and providers. So you don't have to like get them to fax something all the way to, you know, like another system. So it solves a lot of the interoperability problems that we have in data transfer and all of that in our current healthcare space. And finally, redeemables. So for fashion, authentication for goods, verified tickets in any form, and this includes the signing of documents as well. So that, you know, having a note of authenticity is super, super important. So these parts that NFTs represent in our lives that I've talked about, you know, in this conversation, plus more, gaming, governance, healthcare, community interaction, these all represent collectively parts of ourselves. And when you assemble them together, they become a large part of our life and our identity. So ultimately, NFTs represent or can represent, you know, depending on how we build it, a database for our identity. So going back to the first point on how 2D JPEG NFTs relate to culture, in its most essential form, NFTs are memes, packages of data. So in creating these structures in which memes can play in, you can create incentives for the behavior that you ultimately want to see to become more widespread. Like, what are the memes of our humanity? What do we want the meme of our humanity to be? Like, because NFTs represent these ownerships of digital objects that are then programmable, and because this internet, this whole Web3 space is made of these digital objects, they have the power to change the logic of the internet. And, you know, this place, this environment is where we spend, or I'm not going to talk about everyone, but it's where I at least spend most of my time in and on, or a lot of my time in and on. Every action on the blockchain is a immutable vote to extend a part of ourselves that will last much longer than our bodies will, and towards a reality that we have the ability and the power to collaboratively construct together. And so I think, like, zooming out, even, like, the blockchain will represent a tech-enabled version of this collective consciousness and will ultimately become a fascinating and a permanent, immutable historical record of society and sociology and the ways that we interact. So the panopticon. And so the question then becomes, like, what does it mean to be sovereign in a decentralized system of power and reclaiming and expressing our own identities? There's a lot of thinking that we have to do in terms of building the most intentional containers that allow for our fullest expression of self, which come from different applications into portals for collective action, but I think eventually into a larger interconnected network for this sort of experimentation, this sort of collective curiosity and exploration. And ultimately, I think the question that is most interesting for me is the search for truth for everyone involved. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope that was insightful for people, or at least sparked some ideas in terms of what these projects could be and what it means beyond the frontier of just a static JPEG. You know, like, I think there's a lot there, and I'm always excited to talk more about this. So if you have any questions or want to reach out and chat more, you can find me and reach out at my Twitter at MichelleHuang42. So hope everyone has a fun hackathon, and happy to answer any questions if they come up.
Oh my gosh, Michelle, that was mind-blowing. There are like 12 different things I need to Google now. Or I'll just keep talking to you, but I'll do my own research
definitely.
first.
I'm like a total nerd about all of these things. So I'm like 100% down to talk about any and all of this.
It's so awesome. Definitely take a look at the chat. One thing I want to point out for you is one person said, I'm much more interested in Web3 after all of this. So way to go.
Yes, let's go.
Yes. Folks who are tuning in, let us know if you have questions in the chat, or definitely follow Michelle for even more amazing work that she's doing. I need to visit you and try on the Neuro Cube. I'm just going to name it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually creating a art installation on it sometime, possibly in New York, I was working with a Japanese sound therapist on this actually in Japan. So part of the reason also why I'm like, I need my keys working so I can like go in Japan and like incubate all these fun art projects with and for people. So yeah, maybe in Japan, maybe in New York. So,
I'm just gonna act like it's happening. That's gonna be awesome. Can't wait.
exactly.
So
So much
cool.
future.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Lots of future. Cool. So Michelle, thank you so much. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but maybe stick around just in case some come up. But everyone, please make sure to follow her. She's got her handle up on the screen. And thank you again for sharing not only your time, but all of these incredible insights with us. We've learned so much. I'm so excited to continue learning based on what you've already shared.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to all the submissions and can't wait to see all the creative ideas that come up.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'm sure you've inspired at least a few of those. All right, Michelle, thank you. I'm going to bring up my co-hosts again. Everyone, go ahead and share your gratitude for Michelle in the chat. That was really, really cool. And if there's anything you want to revisit, this is getting recorded on our Twitch, so you can come back and rewatch if you'd like. Sweet. So I'm going to let William introduce this next section for everyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we are going to walk through the Replit tutorial that we put together, and this is on Replit. This is the the OpenSea NFT tutorial. And so we have one of our team members from OpenSea who actually used to be an intern at Replit, and she's going to walk us through this. So I believe the video is ready to share. We can kick that off.
All right, let's see. Got it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura, and I'm a product engineer at OpenSea. I've been at OpenSea for 3 months now, and I'm incredibly honored to be hosting and judging this NFT World hackathon that's about to start. I'm especially excited to be judging this and also presenting to you guys today because I was an intern at Replit last summer. So it feels like two worlds colliding, and I'm really excited to be launching all of this today. I'm excited to see what projects you'll be working on throughout this next week and excited for the next few things to come. Today, I'll be showing you how to create an NFT and even deploy it directly on Replit. As a backstory, I started building some NFT projects on the side for the last fall or so. And it was actually before the Solidity template was released on Replit. And it was really cool to see how it happens locally, so that I could really appreciate how Replit can do it, so streamlined and so easily through their platform. They've really done a great job in taking out all the nitty-gritty parts that we shouldn't care about when deploying an application and just focusing on creating cool things in Solidity. So I'm excited to show you a version of this NFT project. You can adapt it to however you want, and we can jump right in. So today I'll just be using the plus button here to create a new REPL, and I'll be searching Solidity here. We can name our REPL whatever we want. I'll call it NFT World, and I'll make it public so you guys can see this later and follow with it. You can even fork it, remix it, and I'd love to see what you come up with it. So we'll give it a few seconds so it loads. But in the meantime, I think it'd be nice to kind of go through some terminology. In case you're not familiar, there's this programming language called Solidity. And that's how we actually write what are called contracts. And essentially, each NFT collection is just a contract. And so I'll actually show you the skeleton of one. This is called simple storage. It actually comes in whenever you use the plus button to create a new Solidity template. This is what comes in. So you can actually see what a real contract looks like. This is deployable. You can just deploy it as is. And it follows this syntax over here. So we call a contract and we can give it a name. And this name will be useful for us to know which contract we're deploying. We can have more than one contract within a file. Pragma Solidity, this line over here, it just specifies what version of Solidity we'll be using, and this is useful for the compiler to know. So if you ever run into any Solidity compiling issues, maybe check out what version you're on and look at some resources to see how to move forward from that. And you'll be seeing this variable type a lot. It's called the uint 256, and that's just an unsigned int. So that's useful for storing numbers and that kind of thing. And as you might imagine, this kind of feels a little bit like Java. This is like, you can declare a function and it returns a certain type. It's very typed language. And you can also notice these keywords here to describe the function. This is useful to know what kinds of functions are public. So that means a function that anyone can call, anyone can access, versus functions that are private. Maybe you want to write a function that is just a helper function. You don't want other people to be calling it. So that will be a private function. You'll also notice this view function, or this view keyword, I should say. This view keyword just tells the compiler, look, this is a function that won't be modifying any data. It won't be changing any numbers or anything. We'll just be accessing what the data it has. And that's useful. I won't get into many details, but to give you a high level, this is just useful for knowing, so the compiler can know, oh, how much should I charge for this interaction? So if you ever run into any issues about maybe you declared a function that's not a view function, but just views data, it's good to know this kind of thing. And down here, we have a pure function. What a pure function is it just, it doesn't even view anything. It won't modify data, and it won't even view a function or view the data. It will just manipulate whatever parameters it's passed in, or if it has no parameters, it'll just return something. It'll provide information, or it will do an action without actually modifying or viewing data. So these are some of the keywords that are very common in Solidity functions, and you'll see them later on. We'll see them later on when we code our NFT project together. So this is all loaded up. I'm going to call the run button. And what this run button does is it just updates the package. It calls in and installs some packages for us, and it'll take care of everything so that we can just kind of start writing the contract itself. If you want to take a look, there are some examples here as well of other contracts. So if you want to see another example of an NFT project, you can see it over here. And another one is over here, which is a token one. It's not an NFT. This is a fungible token. You can kind of take a look. And this wallet is super interesting. It kind of provides a functionality of what a wallet contract looks like. So this is all very cool things you can do on Solidity to inspire you to see what kind of contracts you'll be writing during this hackathon. So let's jump into it. I thought we could do a fun project, which is actually a pet idea of mine. I thought we could write together this Cards Against Humanity NFT. The simplest version of this NFT will actually be probably what we only have time for today, but I invite you to expand from this, remix from my REPL, add functionalities, build off of this contract. Even you don't even have to necessarily just build functions on top of this contract. You can call this contract that's been deployed, and I would love to see what things you kind of run with after this goes live. But the simplest version of it is just there's this game called Cards Against Humanity, and each card is either black or white. A black card is a question card, and a white card is an answer card. And the game dynamic is as follows. There is someone who presents a question card. They draw a question card from the pile, and they're the ones picking which is the best answer that someone brings in. What is the funniest answer maybe, or what is the quirkiest answer given that question? And lots of weird answers or weird question cards are available in this game. And I thought maybe we could have an ownership of this NFT. Basically, each card would be its own NFT image. But there's more that we can do with this. It won't just be an image NFT project. I think we can do something really fun where we can actually write some functionality within the contract that is very Cards Against Humanity. And I'll show you how to do that. Yeah, let me know, tag me on Twitter or comment on this REPL about what things you end up doing as you build off of this. And as a kind of backstory or kind of some context, before this session, I actually went ahead and generated the images that will be attributed to each NFT. I thought you might not want to see waste time on the nitty-gritty of the script that I used to generate the SVGs, but I'll show you what they look like actually. Let me actually share an example. So this is an answer card that was automatically generated. A kind soul on the internet took the time to generate a JSON object full of strings of the actual cards in the game. So it was really easy to parse through with using a simple script. We were able to then generate SVGs that look like the cards with the actual font that is used in Cards Against Humanity, and make sure that there's no overflow like you see on the image. And as you will see from another image, which is the question card that I'll show you, there's a blank that's also generated whenever there's a blank. So this is what the question card looks like. So this is what the image will be whenever we add this to our NFT, and I'll show you how we can do that. But you probably are asking, how are we uploading this? Where are we uploading this? Is it Amazon S3? Is it a Google Cloud bucket? What is it? What I actually chose to use is a very standard best practice within crypto, especially within NFT projects, is what we call the interplanetary file system, short for IPFS. And you can actually upload any kind of document. It can be a zip file. It can be, most people just upload SVGs or pings or images, but you can upload whatever you want. And it serves as a decentralized file system. So you're able to kind of have lots of nodes that will store this file for you. And that's the kind of most crypto native way of having images stored for you. So we can actually get the link that is that the IPFS points to, and we can hard code it within our contract, so that's kind of the immutable way of storing this information. So I went ahead and already uploaded it. It's pretty simple, pretty darn simple actually. All you need to do is create an account. I used Pinata, Pinata, to upload those images, and you're able to just upload a whole host of images at once. And you can either use their dashboard or you can use an API for this, but I went ahead and already uploaded it so we could get that out of the way and just go straight to the Solidity coding. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go back to our REPL. I'm going to go back to that tab, and I'm just going to go ahead and remove this entire contract. If my keyboard cooperates, let's see. Okay, there we go. So we'll use the same syntax that was present before. We'll call this a Cards Against Humanity contract. And we'll be using, kind of similar to an object-oriented way of programming, we'll call this a is ERC721, and I actually will need to import a package for this, but let's go ahead and import it. Let's see if the nft.sol has this actually. It does import a package, but it's not exactly the package that I'll be using. So let me go ahead and copy it from somewhere else. Let's go ahead and do that. And what this does is I'm just pulling in a contract, or sorry, a package from what is called the Open Zeppelin. It's very commonly used. They've provided a protocol for an NFT, and they've actually provided protocols for a whole host of tokens, not just non-fungible tokens, but they've provided protocols for semi-fungible tokens, which are ERC1155s, 1155s, and ERC20s are completely fungible tokens. And we can even go ahead and just take a look at what their documentation looks like for the ERC721, which is the protocol, the name of the protocol for a NFT. So this is their Open Zeppelin docs. They've done an incredible job of providing a standard, which is what everyone uses whenever they're coding an NFT project. And they give you what are the functions that a ERC721 compliant contract needs to have. So things like owner of, approve, get approved, and they even have the parameters and what they're supposed to look like for this kind of protocol. And you don't actually have to worry too much about implementing each of these. There's kind of a way to import their package and just override functions you want to override, and build off of the existing functions that already exist. So if you're curious, you can kind of take a look. There's lots of different protocols that you can take a look at. There are very interesting things coming out of this, and lots of information here. So if you go back to the REPL, I've imported their ERC721 package. And all I'm saying is that this Cards Against Humanity contract is ERC721. So I'm just saying it's ERC721 compliant. And what we'll do as well is we'll call a constructor here. So if we go ahead and call a constructor, there is the ERC721 constructor, and it takes in two parameters. The first parameter is the name of the contract. So if you are a CryptoPunk, it might be called a CryptoPunk collection. This one will be called the Cards Against Humanity collection, and it also takes in a second parameter, which is the symbol, and that's just a CAH symbol. And here we can actually, if you wanted to add logic here about what to do upon constructing this NFT collection, you can add logic here, but we won't be doing that today. Won't be necessary for our purposes. So the one function we're going to be writing together, it's kind of the core function of this contract, is a function called mint2. And what this function does is it takes in a recipient address, and it says, please mint a NFT to this person if possible, if there's any NFT available still. So let's write that together. So this function is called mint2, and it takes in, so this variable type is called an address, and it's what you'd expect in crypto land. It stores a number of type address, so you can even pass in a string that looks just like 0x blah 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 for your address. This can be a contract address, this can be a wallet address, but it stores this address type, and we'll call it a recipient, which is the name of the kind of parameter, and it's a public function. We went over these function types before, so this is something we want the public to be able to call, and it returns a uint of 256. The first thing we're going to do is there is a function called SafeMint that is available through the Open Zeppelin contracts. And it takes in the recipient address, which is actually the parameter. And actually here we have, it also takes in the token ID of what is the token ID that this recipient is actually receiving. So the one thing to also go over in terms of terminology is we went over the fact that the contract is just a collection, or actually the collection is just a contract in Solidity. But also the collection has certain token IDs that point to different NFTs. So the collection address is just like the wallet address of the contract. And if there's 10 NFTs within a collection, each of them will have their own token ID. And that normally spans from 0 to however many NFTs there are in the collection. So in the case of 10, it spanned from 0 to 9. Because it starts from 0. And so the first time anyone calls this mint2 function, the token ID will be 0 for this safe mint call. But we will have to adapt the logic here to kind of, as this is being minted, we need to update, this number and use a counter. So what we can do is we can go ahead and create a UNT256 token counter variable and set it to 0 at first, and this will actually be updated within this mint2 function, as we'll see now. So we can update it pretty similarly to Java by using the ++. And we could leave it at this if it didn't have a returns UNT256 type. So we have to return something, but we can't just return the token counter, because we have to return the token ID that the person actually received their token. So we need to kind of, we could technically just do -1, but what I'll choose to do is I'll store the token ID minted before we increment it, and then down here in the return value, we will return the token ID minted instead. So this is pretty much most of the functionality that we have to write for our mint2 function. And the only thing that you might be asking yourself is, wait, well, what if there's a limited amount of NFTs? Most NFT collections have a limited amount. They don't get minted forever and ever and ever. So we need a way to stop that, right? And maybe we don't want anyone to mint forever and ever. So what we'll do is we'll create another variable here called number of cards. And we'll set that to 10. This is an arbitrary number. I actually generated over 5,000 of the cards and uploaded them to Pinata, the IPFS. But I will only be working with the number 10 for now to make things very simple and show you how it works. So what we will do here is we'll use a Solidity function called require. And this is just an error check function. And it takes in a bool and it takes in a string. So the bool is a way of checking, and if it's false, then it will spit out an error message that is with a string passed in as a second parameter. So what it looks like is the following. Token counter is less than num cards, because if it isn't, then all the tokens have been claimed. And we're requiring this to be true. And the nice thing about the require function actually is that it makes the entire function atomic, which is a fancy way of saying it rolls back any of the transactions that happened before. Any modifications to the token counter or anything we're modifying within this contract, it'll actually roll back everything, and it'll be almost as if nothing has happened. So you are free to make, write anything else here before the require function, which we won't be doing, but you're able to, which is very interesting. There's a whole host of security issues with Solidity. There's a reentrancy bug, which I won't be going into, but if you're curious, Google reentrancy bug, which is a very common mistake that Solidity coders make whenever they're first creating their NFT contract. So, it involves logic around when to add a require call. So take a look at that if you're interested. And this is the end of the Mint 2 function. Now, I mean, we are able to actually deploy this contract as is, and it doesn't, we're able to do this. This is a perfectly fine NFT collection. And if we deploy it to Ethereum, to the mainnet, this will, the images will load at OpenSea as it is. But we want to make this contract, I want to show you a way to make the contract even more unique and even more Cards Against Humanity. And that way you can kind of get inspired on what else you can do within Solidity directly inside the contract to make things interesting. So the function we'll be writing together is the function is question. And this is not Open Zeppelin protocol function. This is something we've decided to write, and we can just add it to the contract. No one's stopping us from writing this function. And we can just do this together. So I'll show you what it looks like. Basically, the intent behind this function is that we will be providing people an ability to call a function of the contract to determine whether a given token ID has a image or an NFT that corresponds to a question card or an answer card. And the reason we want to do this is because people, given that people might be actually interested in building on top of the Cards Against Humanity contract, maybe they're writing a game, website that uses the fact that assets within the Cards Against Humanity contract have ownership. Maybe someone wants to write a game that that is based off of that. And so maybe they need some sort of way of knowing whether a card is a function or a question or an answer card. So we're providing this proactively within the contract before we even deploy, which is we're just looking ahead in case someone would like to build on top of our contract. So the function is going to look as follows. It'll be called isQuestion, and it'll take in a single parameter, which is an unsigned int called token ID, and it'll be an external function. It'll be a view function, which is we went over this earlier, which is a function that only views and doesn't modify any data within the contract, and it returns a bool because it's either a question or an answer card. And so we'll copy over that same require from above, except the error message is going to be a little bit different. We're going to call it token ID non-existent. And we're going to have to loop through each of the token IDs and see whether it is a question card or an answer card. And so what we'll do is I actually, as context as well, before I uploaded to Pinata, it was very important to me that the cards were randomly shuffled. Originally, the JSON object that I used to parse through all of the existing cards, the 5,000 different strings, those were all in order. First, first several thousand were answer cards, and then the last couple thousand were question cards. And we don't want that to happen here necessarily, because that would mean that it wouldn't be random. We wouldn't want people I think it was actually even in order of alphabetical order. So we wouldn't want people to game this minting process. We want to make things very random. So so what I did is I shuffled them before I uploaded them all to the IPFS. And so what I did is because we use this arbitrary 10 here for the number of cards, I just took a look at what the first 10 cards are and saw which ones are question cards and which ones are answer cards. So to make an NFT, or sorry, to make a uint array, this is the syntax. And what I'm having here is, I'm going to call this question cards, and it'll just store the array of indices of the token IDs. So so the question card, out of the 10 first cards that were uploaded, the question cards are the token 0, 2, 4, and 5. And we could actually do a, answer cards array, I guess. Like, we could probably do the same thing. And these are all the numbers that aren't 0, 2, 4, and 5. I'm missing an 8 here. But we don't need this answer cards array because this is, it can be deduced from the question cards array, especially if we know how many cards are in total. So we don't have to worry about that. So we can kind of just go ahead and loop through all of the question cards arrays. And if the token ID isn't present in it, then we know it's an answer card. So let's go ahead and build that logic for uint256. This is very similar to other languages if you've coded before. So this shouldn't be too complicated. We're looping through all of the question cards, tokens, and we can see if question cards at that index is the token ID, which is passed in as a parameter. We can return true. If we loop through all of the question cards and they don't return true, then that means that we know it's false. So this is it. This is the function is question. And the last thing that I forgot to add is we're going to override the URI function that is present in the OpenZeppelin package of ERC721. What this is we're just telling them, telling the compiler where is the metadata stored for this token ID. And the neat thing about this is that if we override the base URI function, it'll actually handle appending the slash and the 0 or the slash and the 1 or whatever token ID it is to the end of the URI. So if you upload your images in such a way that the last, the 0 corresponds to the actual token ID 0 of your image, and the 1 corresponds to the token 1, and so on and so forth. It's actually a neat way that the ERC721 protocol actually handles it for you. So it'll make more sense once we override the function, but here it is. So we are overriding the function base URI, and it's an internal function. We wouldn't want people calling this function necessarily. And it's a pure function because it doesn't actually modify any data, or it doesn't even view it for that matter. So that's why it's a pure function. It's an override function, and it returns string memory, which is just a fancy way of calling the string type in Solidity. And here we're going to return the address that stores all of the NFTs that we have in this collection, all the metadata. And so this is pretty much it. And this is, it's really interesting to think that the contract can be so powerful with just a few lines of code. It's only, a few dozen lines, and you're able to really do a lot with this and get creative and build any logic. So an example here with this mint2 function is maybe you want every other person to be able to mint, not every single person. So maybe you can build logic for that too. Or maybe you only want a whitelist of people to, you know, be able to mint. So there's lots of things you can code within this this contract, and the opportunities are endless. It's all up to you. And as long as it's ERC 721 compliant, which is easy to do because of this Open Zeppelin package, you're able to call it an NFT. So this is it. I think we're ready to deploy it now, and I'll show you what it looks like on the interface. So I'll give you a context of what this looks like, especially if you haven't used Replit before. This can look like a Replit interface actually, but it's not actually a Replit interface. The Solidity template is built in such a way that this looks like it's part of Replit, but it's actually not. It's just a website. You can actually click this button here and open in a new tab, and it'll actually be a hosted website, you know, and this is it. Yeah, this is just the rendering of the website that is actually coded. If we look at tools, you can modify index.js or UI.jsx in order to kind of modify this interface here. But the neat thing is that they've actually loaded all of they kind of, instead of having to kind of console, you know, use command lines in order to deploy the contract or compile the contract, you can kind of, on a click of a button through Replit itself, click those buttons. And if you want, you can actually deploy this website. You can change it however way you want it and deploy it, and it'll be something that people can also interact with your contract. Maybe they want to mint an NFT with the contract that you created and deployed. And so they've already kind of built the skeleton for you, along with buttons here that allow you to kind of connect your wallet, deploy the contract, and that kind of thing. So if you're interested, Replit really is the most streamlined way I've seen to deploy and write NFT contracts. So without further ado, let's connect our wallet. You probably can't see my screen, but a MetaMask wallet appeared. Highly suggest also using MetaMask. It's the most supported wallet in crypto land. Most of the websites and most of the crypto websites support MetaMask, so I highly recommend. And as you can see, now we're connected, and it shows how much ETH I have. This is actually fake ETH. You know, if you're not familiar what a testnet is, a testnet is maybe you don't want to deploy your contract directly to the real blockchain because Ethereum is expensive and deploying can be very, very expensive. And so, you know, it's very expensive to try things out, especially with crypto projects, without having a way to test things, make sure that they look sane before doing the real thing. And there's lots of testnets actually out there. There's one called Rinkeby, which is very widespread, Ropstein as well. But what Replit found was that by using Rinkeby, and originally it was actually a Rinkeby connected interface within Replit, but they found that it was really hard to make it as streamlined as they envisioned. And so they built their own testnet, which is also really cool. And so to make the user experience the most streamlined possible, they built this testnet, and you can actually, through a click of a button, get fake ETH for testing, which is also a whole other thing. Whenever you're testing using other testnets, it's really hard to find fake ETH. Sometimes you have to jump through hoops to be able to get it. But through the Replit testnet, it's just through the click of a button through this website. So they've done a great job in making this very streamlined. I've already used a little bit of it to test it myself, so you can see I got 1 ETH originally, but now it's already down to 0.9877, but it's no problem. Still have a lot of ways to go. And this is the beginning of my wallet address. So we know we're connected. It's green. We're ready to go. And it already detected that there is a contract I can deploy called the Cards Against Humanity contract. And let's deploy it. Let's click the button. You can't see now, but there's a MetaMask pop-up that is confirming how much money it's going to be, but it's fake ETH anyway. So I just clicked yes. And you can actually deploy to Ethereum mainnet as well through Replit. So not only through the Replit testnet, but you can deploy through to Ethereum. So yeah, you can do it directly from here. It'll take a few minutes or seconds to deploy. We can take a look and see what's going on. But in a few seconds, oh, I think it's already deployed. Let's see. There we go. It's already deployed. So this is a really interesting interface they built as well. It contains all of the functions that this contract supports. And as you can see, we didn't write all of these. They came with the ERC-721 protocol that I was showing you, and you can even see it through that Open Zeppelin documentation that we opened up together. Those are all the functions that we needed to support if we want to be ERC-721 compliant, but we don't actually have to write all of them necessarily. We can just rely on the package to write them for us and override or add as we wish. And so we can actually kind of click to each of these functions, and there's, if there's 2 parameters, it'll show 2 input places for us to kind of input things. Maybe there's no input at all, and it'll just output something. So let's play around with it and see if it's working. Hopefully it's working. But we can even see whether it's a read-only view kind of function. So let's see what the name. We're expecting this name function to spit out Cards Against Humanity. Let's see if it's working. So the output is Cards Against Humanity, and as you can see, this is the string that's over here. It's not the name of the contract up here on line 6. It's just the string we passed in the constructor. Same for symbol. Let's go check out symbol. It's CAH, and let's try to see if we can mint a function to ourselves. So I'm just gonna go copy my wallet address. I can just copy it directly through this interface, and I'm gonna copy it over here. And this requires gas, so I'm expecting the MetaMask pop-up to come up. Okay, great. So the MetaMask popped up. You can't see this, but it's going back to the Replit interface now. And yes, now we can see that there's a transaction hash attached to this transaction. We know it went through. And the neat thing about it is if I go over to my MetaMask Chrome extension, I can actually see the transaction. I can see it's like there's a pending transaction, with what, with this information. It tells me, there's something being minted to your wallet, which is really exciting. This is really happening. So now that we've minted something, let's see, there's a function called owner of, and we pass in the number of a token ID, and it spits out the address of the owner of. So I'm expecting if we do 0 for this first function or for this first token, then I expect my address to come up, which is the correct one. As you can see, it's 8DDB, and that's the one that's showing up here. This is my address. So this is all working as intended. And if we try 1 just to see what happens, I want to show you what happens when an invalid or wrong thing is called. If we run it, then there's an error message. And so if you're ever building the website that relies on contracts, then you would probably have logic about how to handle these cases and how to output to the user in a friendly way. So yeah, because only 1 token has been minted, the token ID of 1 isn't available or isn't actually minted, and so there's no owner. So this is this is working as intended. And the last function we'll check out is the is question. So if we go over here and do 0, I'm expecting it to be true because it's part of the question cards array. If we do 1, let's see, I'm expecting it to be false. Great, it's false as well. So this is it. Feel free to, build off of this interface. They've already done all the scaffolding for you. You're able to kind of move the UI components as you wish, and then build your own website that, interacts with the contract. That's the ideal situation. The goal here, I think, is to kind of go beyond a simple project and do something that's useful and usable by people. So yeah, this is it. I hope this was useful, and I'm really excited to see what projects you have you'll have done by the end of this week. And yeah, and let me know what things you are working on. Would love to see what things you are able to do. So this is it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, everyone. That was Lara Fiuza from OpenSea and also formerly from Replit. Love to be able to claim her from both sides of the partnership. I saw a lot of questions in the chat. That was a pre-recorded session, but she is very good at making it sound live. So if you have any extra questions, I am sending them to Lara, and we will follow up in the Discord with answers to those distinct questions from her. Yeah, I hear you, Odin and Crusoe cards. That was a great session. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We are so excited to kick off this jam and see what you all build. You've already met some of our judges. Lara, Michelle, you saw Steve, the Build Space team. We also have folks from Replit judging. And some final housekeeping before we say goodbye is I want to plug again, join the Discord. That's the quickest way for you all to get updates, get help, and generally just make friends, because that's what it's actually all about. Thanks, William, for adding that in the chat again. Here's a reminder that all participants will be receiving beautiful POAPs with art by our in-house artist at Replit, the very Joe Baker. He's truly phenomenal. So make sure to participate to have one of those. And then also follow us on Twitter. You saw the banner streaming across the screen this whole time with our various Twitter accounts. We've got them below our faces here. And as an extra little bonus for you all, tweet out your progress updates with the hashtag Hello NFT World, and then make sure that you're tagging Replit and OpenSea. And you just might be featured on our Twitter accounts as well. I'm going to love seeing, sharing all of the work in progress to inspire everyone. I think one big takeaway from today is that it's not just about us as individuals. It's about collaborating, sharing, and lifting one another up. And I'll leave it at that. Don't need to get more into my fuzzy wuzzies. But any last thoughts from William or Connor?
No, I think we're good. We will be sending a follow-up email with links to the Discord, links to the Replit, links to sign up for the API key. And then if we miss anything in there, again, I think Discord, well, I don't think Discord is going to be the best form of communication. It'll be the quickest response. So just jump into Discord. We're going to have teams from OpenSea and all the other teams supporting us. So we'll be able to, help you and provide support there. But yeah, we look forward to seeing what you build. And Connor, any parting words?
No, stoked to see what you guys build. The recording will be here on Twitch, so we'll share that link. Also, in the email, if you want access to the OpenSea API, that is where that form link will be. But maybe, honestly, I'm going to throw it in chat really quick, because I think that would be helpful as well before we leave. Okay, sweet. Yeah, that's the form to request the OpenSea API, but that'll also be in the email. So yeah, I think that's everything. Make sure to join the Discord. I know we're hammering that home, but that's right.
Oh, did we mention join the Discord?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, everyone. Have a great night, morning, evening, whatever you're doing right now. And happy coding. Can't wait to see what you build.
Thank you. Bye, guys.